I've been building long rifles for a lot of years. I started when I was about 15 or so, and just as kind of just an interest that caught my attention. I was always looking for things to do, and I liked working with my hands, and grew up in a family that liked history. So I started then and went to school, went to college, became an engineer, a metallurgical engineer, and didn't build guns for a few years. After a few years had passed after college, I started building them again while working as an engineer. Yes, I spent a lot of time studying and learning the craft, and well respected in the world of custom gun builders, muzzleloading custom gun builders. But I also had an engineering background and an engineering mindset. So I was able to look at the problems and try to come up with solutions to make things faster and quicker and better using modern technology, which is kind of well, at least in the muzzleloading world, it's a rare combination. There's really no one else that I'm aware of that has that combination of the engineering plus knowing the original work plus the artistic design sense as well.
One of the things that I admired about Jim when I met him, but sometimes it's also very frustrating, but it helps make him the expert, is his ability to hyper-focus. When he is interested in something, he will dig in and he will learn everything there possibly is to learn about that thing. Like the books, he has so many different books on originals. He went to shows and saw originals. He can remember a lot of those details too. So when he's working on something or thinking about something that has to do with any one of these guns, he can picture the things in his mind. He can tell which exactly, if a line is off by just a tiny bit, he can tell. I sort of take care of all of the other things that like maybe a not super focused person would maybe have those parts in their own brain. I let him focus on all the gun stuff and all the engineering stuff. But that's part of what makes him so good. So even though he's relatively young, it's as though he has a really long lifetime full of learning, because he's
and for a lot of years it was just my life, it was just what I did.
It was his free time.
My focus.
Yeah.
So
for a good time, he'd do these, you'd go to shows and you'd make guns.
Build high-end guns,
Yeah, in the little tiny house that he had, one of the rooms had a CNC machine that he got for fun for like 30,000 bucks or so to be able to inlet barrels, when other people, maybe when they had an engineering job, would be buying like fancy cars or like going on vacation, doing things like that. He was putting his energy, his mental energy and his money and everything into this. He's just always been very passionate about it, I guess. So
we make recreations of flintlock long rifles or muzzleloaders, and these are made very closely to how they'd have been made in the 18th and 19th centuries. We also use a lot of equipment to be able to make, a lot of modern equipment to be able to make the guns very quickly and very precisely. They're all sold in kit form, and since they're so precise and uniform, customers can easily put them together themselves and take part in the process and feel good about it in the end. So we really filled a niche that was kind of absent in the muzzleloading market, a way to have very, very high quality firearms, not have to wait forever to get one, or maybe never get it depending on where you tried to buy it from. Worked out very well for us.
One of the problems that it solves, actually on our first date, is when he told me about the idea, and he said that the way the kit market is that you had to be an expert in order to participate. It was a very high bar for getting new people in. You had to spend years, working on your skills.
Yeah, so the kits would have been much more difficult to put together. Mm-hmm. And in order to have success, unless you had like maybe a strong aptitude for woodworking or metalworking, it could take, months, and then you might still not have success in the end.
So there were a lot of people that we thought could possibly enjoy this. And he just had mentioned it because he had a CNC machine where he did barrel inletting, and he said that something that rattled around in his head sometimes is a possibility someday, but he said it'd be a whole lot of work, and he wasn't sure if he wanted to do that much work.
And I'm good at the, well, at least back then I was good at the manufacturing, the engineering part of it, but the business part of it, didn't have any idea. You know, Catherine was a help with that. You know, we were both starting fairly from nothing with the business part of it, but even having somebody to take care of that end was a big help. So my background is making guns one at a time, high-end custom guns. That's part of my background anyway. And you know, I spent a great deal of time studying originals, and you really can't make a quality reproduction of it unless it represents the originals. And that's not saying it's like a exact copy of any particular gun, but what you do with enough study and enough knowledge, you develop a feel of what the guns should be like, and you assimilate all that knowledge and can put it into a design. So we're very, very conscious of historical correctness. We don't want to compromise really any on that. You know, at the same time, have a very high quality gun.
The originals, something that I've heard you say a lot is the lines are good. Like if you study enough of them, you can see that there's certain design elements that go really well together. Sometimes when people don't look at originals and then make a gun, you can tell because it's a piecemeal. There's something here, something there. And some of those kits were like that as well. It's sort of a mishmash of sort of random elements, but the originals, a lot of times, there was a lot more harmony in the design.
Without a doubt. And these original guns were not only very functional, they served a purpose, but they're also artistic. It's common with a lot of things from that period. They weren't just a functional utilitarian item, but they also had decoration and design and carving and engraving. So they had definitely a very strong artistic expression. You know, they were often very highly decorated, and some kind of consider the long rifle, the Kentucky rifle, to be one of the earliest, you know, kind of art forms that developed in this country. You
know, a lot of the people who enjoy these are also, you know, they really like history. To be true to that, like if it's something where they want to get a rifle because they had a family member that was in the Revolutionary War, to have something that could have been used at that time is very important, rather than kind of making up something completely new. You know, we use new methods for sure, but that lets us make these very true to the history.
One thing I tell people is, you know, I spent a lot of years making guns one at a time by hand, and you know, making high-end custom guns, and basically we still have those same standards, even though we're making them with equipment. You know, so you're getting, you know, basically a high-end custom gun, or at least the start of that, and you know, for a very, very affordable price.
The quality in a lot of different ways, as far as the design, the inputs, the quality of the parts, how accurate to historical, and all different ways.
Even, you know, it didn't happen immediately, but even, you know, wait time, you know. We often sell stuff with no wait at all, shipped next day now. 9 years ago, you'd have been waiting 6 months for a kit.
Yeah, these kits there was a very long wait time. The technology in the kit market hadn't changed for 20, 30 years. They had been doing things
One thing in the
way.
muzzleloading is, you can imagine it, that people are very traditional minded, and there's not many that adopt the idea of technology, and to be honest, even running a business in a modern sense, you know. So it was really a niche or a need that hadn't been fulfilled. So that's one of the reasons why it's worked out real well for us. And at the other end of the spectrum that we don't really think about too much on a general basis, but there's the lower end kit guns that, you know, may cost $600 or less, maybe. So I don't know, I'm not up on them, but they kind of somewhat look like an original, but you know, they have a lot of issues, not only with looks and aesthetics, but also function. They're just made very cheap, they're imported, and those are definitely ones that don't work well on a general basis, especially flintlock. Tarnish the name of a flintlock, you know, in the end. A lot of people aren't aware of, you know, what a good quality flintlock can do, and how, you know, functional they are, how well they work.
And they might blame themselves for having a bad experience. Like and being imported doesn't make them bad, but they're imported, like some of these are made in factories, like on the floor, like the Indian factories are pretty bad,
Some of them
right?
are, yeah.
But then they'll blame themselves. They'll have a bad experience. It'll sit in their closet for 20 years, or they'll go out and it won't shoot well, and they'll think they did something wrong, and it'll turn them off, and they then won't tell anybody about it. It won't grow.
Yeah. So the
but
alternative,
we try to have people have a good experience.
Yeah. And the alternative to these low-end flintlocks was to buy a handmade custom gun, which at the highest end, you could get a very good gun, but at the Sort of the lower end, you have a lot of people just kind of pretending that they're gun builders. You might get it, you might not. It might have a huge bunch of problems in itself. So that's one option that somebody would have. The other option would be, you know, putting together a kit that's available, a high-end kit, but those were just more or less a part set, semi-finished part set that, again, required a lot of skill, a lot of time in order to complete.
And then the super high-end guns, you could be waiting for
years,
like 6 years. Some people's wait lists were, and they could be tens of thousands of dollars for something like that. So they'd be purchased a lot of times by collectors who had a lot of money, but it wouldn't be people who could go out and necessarily, there was a very small group of people that could go out and enjoy these.
In some ways, it's a little bit of a kind of little exclusive club or a little niche club, you know.